the DA has seemingly taken a stance with regards to farm murders. And I want to ask you that when you look at farm murders, do you think they divorced from the daily violence that South Africans all across the country suffer from? There's about 27,000 people that were killed in a year period, right?
Sounds like a war.
Right. So do you think that farm murders is a separate entity that should be taken separate from the daily violence that every South African goes through?
I mean, violence is violence, and people who die, because of crime, die. And that's not good. We must fight that. I think the nature of farmers, when you talk about farmers, we're talking about people living in rural areas.
Mm.
Because it's cross. The violence that people go through, and sort of the brutality of it is different to a normal house breaking. When I say normal, it shouldn't be normal. A house breaking that happens in a suburb. The isolatedness of the people living in rural areas is also not the same, because people can't shout for their neighbor or get help quickly. So there is an element that is different. I think when you add then the political context of the type of rhetoric that we hear in the media, not the media, but politicians, and the sort of there's no other group of people. Rural people are victimized because of their isolatedness. So yes, I do think that there is that we must treat them differently, like we must treat gangs differently. It's a specialized type of activity. It's not a house robbery. It's organized crime. And so I think that's the difference, the brutality of it. So, someone breaks into your house in suburban Sandton, you're not likely going to be tied up, beaten, have hot water poured on you, and the like. And that's usually what you find. I know that's the extreme case. And also, you're probably going to have a reaction very much quicker in suburban Sandton than you are in rural, wherever you are in South Africa. But I think you're not asking the question that you want to ask. Because the idea of farm murders suggests that it's white people.
Yeah,
and farming is. But you must ask the question. Let's get to ask the question.
And no, I do get that, and I think because obviously I was leading up to it about especially the right leaning, and organizations like obviously AfriForum have pushed a certain narrative, right, where that they feel that through these farm murders, white people are being persecuted in the country. Obviously, we do know that farm murders, they do also include people that work in the farms who are not necessarily always white. And obviously, I do want to get your thoughts on that. Do you feel there's some sort of persecution on white people?
No, I don't think on white people, no. I think that generally you find that most of your farmers are white, and therefore the proportion of white farmers being attacked would be white. But that doesn't mean that the crime is only against white people. I used to be the spokesperson for agriculture in the province for the DA, and there were more incidents against rural, and I'm sorry, small-scale black farmers in rural areas that went unreported than there were against white farmers. So the problem is there. It exists across the racial divide. AfriForum has obviously got a membership group, and they're an advocacy for a certain group, so I can't speak for them, and they must do the work that they do. But from the DA's perspective, where we intervene, we say, well, all people living in rural areas, particularly rurals, and that's why we have, the rural safety plan. It's not the farmer's safety plan, it's the rural safety plan, because we recognize that. To get to the point of sort of right-leaning versus left-leaning, we are a centrist organization, and that center spreads left and right. Not extreme and not extreme. Your center has views on either side. So on one side, we are an organization that provides the best social services to people living under our governments, and that might be seen as a leftist view, just that sort of direction. On the other side, we're saying that we're being citizens are being abused in terms of taxes, and they're being overtaxed and underserviced, and that's a very right-leaning view. But we occupy the center, and the center does have those two views. I mean, myself, I'm a social democrat. That doesn't mean that I don't believe in the DA and that I must leave the DA and start another party. It means that my voice must find expression within that centrist discussion so that we have the best center viewpoint.